Hi, I'm Andy Smith, and this is my presentation on the Alexander technique and school sports. Sport is an area that's close to my heart and one which I believe has a great deal of potential for growth in our profession. In this presentation, I'm going to examine some of the challenges that Alexander teachers face when it comes to school sports, as well as some of the opportunities that I believe are out there. I'll then talk about some of the ways that I work with sports people before opening up a discussion about how we as a community can work together to make Alexander more accessible within school sports. But first, I'll tell you a bit about myself. I'm an Alexander teacher and running teacher based in North London, and I also teach Alexander at Uppingham School. Sport has been a big part of my life, both before and after training to be an Alexander teacher. In my previous career, I spent 10 years working as a sports journalist, and I've worked as a sports PR account manager and press officer to the university boat race. I've also been a county level sportsman. However, I had to stop playing in my mid-20s when I suffered from a herniated disc in my lumbar spine. This left me unable to do exercise for several years. But thankfully I came across the Alexander technique, and now I'm as fit and mobile as I have been for a long time. I've benefited so much from the technique, particularly when it comes to sport, and I'm now keen to spread the word and help other people benefit just as much as I have. In my time working with runners and sporty Alexander pupils, both at Uppingham and in London, I've been struck by how much of an effect our work can have. Light bulbs often appear when students see the practical implications of bringing greater awareness, non-doing, inhibition and direction into their sport, and even small amounts of sporty work seem to make a lasting impression. I imagine many other Alexander teachers have seen similar results. However, the amount of Alexander that's taught in school sports that I know of is very small. So for me, there are two big questions. One, how can we grow our work in a field that traditionally has very little understanding or awareness of Alexander? And two, what are the best ways that we can work with young sports people? So let's start by looking at some of the main challenges that Alexander teachers face when trying to bring our work into school sports. It's no secret that school budgets are being squeezed at the moment, and the knock-on effects of the coronavirus have only made things worse, with even less money available for schools to invest in employing external practitioners to work with their pupils. The second point, which I touched on earlier, is a lack of knowledge and understanding about what Alexander is within school sports. And with so many other more established disciplines and training methods that PE departments can employ, why would they choose something they don't know about? And this leads me on to point number 3. Despite many Alexander teachers believing in our work's inherent value in sport, there's a lack of concrete evidence that specifically shows that Alexander can help sports people. So at first glance, it doesn't necessarily look promising for our profession. But being an optimist, I also like to see the opportunities that the very nature of our work can offer. The first thing to mention is that what Alexander teachers would call good use is rarely coached. Yes, there are mentions of good posture or staying tall or not gripping a racket too tightly, for example, but as we all know, that's not the same as teaching good use. And I believe we genuinely have something different to offer. So if we can demonstrate how beneficial having good use is to improving performance, while at the same time reducing the risk of injury, we instantly have something that many schools will be interested in. Point 2. In competitive environments, athletes are often pushed quite hard to raise their fitness, and this can do two things: increase the risk of injury and leave athletes carrying around unnecessary tension once the training sessions are finished. Over time, this tension can build up and impair their use, make injuries more likely, and affect future performance. The awareness, conscious thought, and good use that Alexander teaches will inherently help athletes find mental and physical release so they're able to come back to more of a neutral after their session finishes. Next, although top sports people and coaches often talk about the importance of staying in the present when competing, this often isn't addressed at school sports. However, the increased awareness and breath work that Alexander offers can help pupils stay in the moment, which leads to greater ease of movement and flow. The fourth point. In many ways, Alexander teachers are performance coaches, whether it's with sport or music, acting or everyday life. And often with performance comes performance anxiety, which in turn can lead to a fear of failure, and like any fear, it evokes a startle pattern. And what profession is better suited than Alexander teachers to work with people to overcome this? The music world has so many good examples of how to work with performance anxiety, which will be equally valid for sport. And finally, the increased sense of awareness that our work can bring also enables students to take on board coaching advice more effectively, so we can work alongside their coaches, not up against them. Let's now imagine that we've achieved our goal of finding an opportunity to work with a group of young sports people. How can we engage with them? From my experience, most young people are not interested in exactly what the Alexander technique is, and they can get put off by some of the technical language. However, they generally love the effects that our work can bring. So initially at least, I avoid terms like inhibition and direction, and I use simplified versions, and this is something I'll come on to again later in the presentation. The second point here is explain at the outset what you'll be doing that's different from what they normally get taught. I tend to say something like, I'm not going to teach you how to play your sport, that's what your coach or your teacher's for. I'm going to teach you how to use your body well in order to make you a better athlete. Next, use practical activities that quickly show improvements. If you can improve their coordination or sporting ability, you're onto a winner. Also, relate our work into professional sport. If you can make links between them and their heroes, they're more likely to engage. Here's an example of something I do. Instead of talking about monkey or the position of mechanical advantage, I talk about the ready position. Thinking of it in this way introduces a sense of energy, and it subtly prepares a student for movement in any direction without overthinking. It also avoids students trying to find the correct position, i.e. fixed position, that can sometimes happen with monkey. Once I've introduced the idea of ready position, I relate it to sport. Variations include a surfer catching a wave, a golfer at a dress position, a gymnast landing a vault, somebody doing squats in a gym, a skier gliding down a mountain, or a tennis player receiving serve, a goalkeeper waiting to save a penalty, or a hockey player dribbling a ball. The position suddenly becomes practical and relatable, and the images show the link between the ready position, good use, and good performance across a range of sports. These images can also easily begin a discussion about primary control and how form affects function, and then lead to games where students perform a sporting activity while scrunched up, stiff, floppy, with heavy knees, or a tight neck and shoulders, and then comparing these with a free and easy ready position. Or you could call out a sport at random, and the pupils have to adopt a version of the ready position which is appropriate to that sport. Another tool I use is a variation of the ready list that Sue and Judith teach on the Developing Self course. But instead of teaching students to stop and ask, am I seeing, am I breathing, am I balancing, before continuing with a soft and tall body, which is great within the time and space of a classroom, I change things slightly and instead use pause, breathe, think, move with ease. I find this form to be slightly quicker, which makes it more practical when playing sport, and it helps bring flow and freedom into the next movements. I normally suggest directions like be aware of your whole self, connect with your feet, allow necks and shoulders to be soft, or simply let your bodies be more movable. Or the thought could easily be a reminder of a technical point that they're working on with their coach. The awareness of body and breath here brings a person into the present and prevents them from becoming too technical in their thinking, or worrying too much about performing. It also allows the athlete to do what sports psychologists call control the controllables. Introducing a pause and some space to think allows us to focus on the things that we can control, such as our thoughts and movements, and ignore areas that we can't, such as what the weather is doing, or the attitude of your opponent. The ready list also has the beauty of introducing inhibition and direction without using any technical language. After I've discussed the ready list, I introduce the idea of what I call trigger points. Trigger points are specific, predictable times during sport where there's space for conscious awareness or to run through the ready list. For example, just before you serve a tennis ball, take a moment to pause, breathe, think, and move with ease. Or when you prepare to hit a golf ball, pause, breathe, think, and move with ease. Or when you take a penalty in football, or before you go up a steep hill on a run. There are endless opportunities to use trigger points in a practical way, no matter what the sport. And with practice, it then becomes possible to bring this space to direct into other times, not just at trigger points. Something we know as thinking and activity. The Zen Run was first shown to me by Malcolm Bulk and is a great mindful movement activity for groups of all ages. In a playing field, school playground or hall, begin by walking together for a minute and asking the group to simply think and refresh a single Alexander thought, such as, "My shoulders are easy." Then after a minute of repeating the thought, move together into a jog, while still refreshing the same thought. Then walk for another minute with a different thought, for example, "Let your stomach be easy," before taking that into a run. You can continue for as long as you like, introducing a new thought on each rotation. This exercise calms the body and mind, brings focus, and again introduces the idea of direction without labelling it. It's a lovely warm-up activity and can be adapted for serious runners by alternating between 1 minute of jogging and 1 minute of running at race pace. The Zen Run can also be adapted to any other sport you like. For example, you could split footballers or rugby or hockey players into pairs and get them to slowly pass the ball to each other for a minute while thinking an Alexander thought. Then speed up the passing while keeping conscious thought going before restarting with a new thought. Or you could do something similar with tennis, squash or badminton players having a rally while refreshing those thoughts. Just like with music and drama, sports people can also suffer from performance nerves, and this is an interesting area to work on with some of the more serious athletes. Discuss what happens to them when they're under pressure. Do they get tight necks or shoulders, butterflies, impaired thinking? From here, it's easy to introduce the idea of psychophysical unity and bring in some helpful directions and the ready list to help ease the pressure. Most children love technology, so why not tap into the world of YouTube to find examples of great coordination? I won't show them here, but if you're interested in watching these videos that I've listed, pause for a few seconds to take a note of the links. Photos are another great way of engaging with children. We've already seen how images can help explain the ready position, but they can be just as useful to highlight other Alexander principles as well, or for showing the difference between good and poor use. The web is full of photos that we can use for inspiration, and there's no limit to how creative we can get. Here are 2 examples of photos that I use. With the 2 at the top, I asked my pupils who they think is a better runner. It's pretty obvious, even if you don't know that the man on the right is the world's greatest marathon runner, Eliud Kipchoge. But this simple question normally raises a smile and invariably leads to interaction from the students. I then ask why they've chosen Kipchoge, which leads us on to the concepts of primary control, habit, form affecting function, and non-doing. The next photo is brilliant for demonstrating means whereby versus end gaining. Which runner here is trying their hardest in the conventional sense of trying, and who is looking most relaxed? And finally, which one wins the race? It leaves the pupils realising that finding dynamic release when running, or playing any sport, is often more effective than straining every sinew. So I've looked at some of the challenges we face in working with school sports, and I've covered some of the potential opportunities, plus a few ways of working. The next question is, how can we move forwards? Our community of Alexander teachers has so many wonderful, creative and talented people, and many of us will have worked with sports people in some way or another. However, I'm not aware of too many teachers who specialise in sport, especially sport generally. What I would like to do is bring people together. Perhaps we can launch a special interest group to kick things off, or maybe we can do something different. But in order to grow our work in sport, we need to get talking and sharing ideas. So if anybody would like to contact me to discuss this, please email me on info@andysmith.uk.com, or you can contact me through my website andysmith.uk.com. To really make an impact, I believe we also need to create more of a structure to our teaching and develop a comprehensive, repeatable syllabus to help schools understand the ways we can benefit their sports students. The PE teachers I've spoken to like the idea of Alexander, but find it hard to commit to any classes. This is partly due to funding, but partly due to the unknown quantity of what they would get. by offering standardised and professional packages which include lesson plans, learning outcomes and a step-by-step structure, we get to clearly and accurately demonstrate what we can offer and explain how we will do it. So with this in mind, the Developing Self team are in the very early stages of creating a sports module to include in the education training course that Sue and Judith currently teach. When time and circumstances allow, we'll be looking to draw up syllabuses to cover primary and secondary education. These would include activity and lesson ideas and materials for workshops, short courses, after-school clubs and teacher training days. This project is currently in its infancy, but we hope to get something launched and ready to teach in 2021. Again, if you'd like to get in touch to discuss this, please email me on info@andysmith.uk.com. Thank you for your time today, and I hope you enjoy the rest of the conference.